Employee Pension Fund has been at the forefront of a number of key initiatives. These have included supporting environmental, social and governance factors and promoting the CRISA code. John Oliphant, the fund's principal executive, is back with us to talk about the broader social role that investment managers can play. And John, we obviously promoted the fact that you were going to be appearing on Investment 360 this evening, and a number of viewers sent us questions that they wanted us to address. So just picking up on our discussion before the break, here's quite a lengthy question, and it's: in a world of low yields and underfunded pension funds, the search is focused on extra yield to correct deficit on balance sheets. Africa is an attractive destination for this higher yield, but the continent is still seen as too risky by global investors who might only have a very small indirect exposure to a very large continent through an emerging market portfolio. The GEPF has been actively investing in Africa, we discussed, and that bet has paid off handsomely. As the investment principal for one of the biggest pension funds in the world, what is your advice to, say, a UK-based pension scheme when evaluating investing in Africa? I had to read out, it was so beautifully worded, I had to go through all the detail there.
Yeah. No, it's an excellent question. And I think the most important thing is that Africa, I think everyone appreciates that, growth, in terms of global economies, the fastest growing economies, most of them are based in Africa. But if I'm imagining if you're sitting in the UK or you're sitting in the US and you're kind of like interested in growing your portfolio by having an exposure into these markets, you're asking yourself a lot of questions on how do you get that exposure. And I think having the GEPF as, one of the largest investors on the continent, putting its hand up to pursue opportunities on the African continent, I think that will have a significant multiplier effect for the benefits of all of us as Africans. So I think Africa is sitting in a sweet spot because capital in developed markets, and we spoke about it earlier on, $28 trillion, it's sitting there and looking for a new home. And I think, GEPF has taken a view that, look, we want to be the first one in, and then we also want to become a catalyst for attracting more capital into the continent. And in our opinion, we think most of the opportunities are existing in the unlisted space. And obviously with unlisted space comes a little bit of extra risk, but you often get rewarded.
Just a little bit of extra risk.
You get rewarded for that additional liquidity risk and all other stuff, But I agree that it's challenging because you've got multiple currencies. If you look at an infrastructure project in South Africa, you're getting paid in rands. If you look at a project in Botswana, you're paid in pula. So I think the issue of currency and so forth and currency risk, it's some of the issues as an investor you might want to take into account. But I think by and large, there are great opportunities and there's great appetite even for most of the African countries to accommodate investor capital.
John, you've identified obviously the opportunity in private equity. We did also have a question from a viewer just on that in particular. He said, why private equity and not listed equity? Is there, what are the sort of constraints around pushing more money into Africa's public markets?
Yeah, the challenge is that most of the public markets are not well developed. The liquidity is an issue, and also you've got dual listed companies. So if you go to some of the stock exchanges on the continent, you get exposure to the same South African companies that are listed here. So you're not getting the real exposure to the underlying economy. So I think in emerging or developing economies, you need to give attention to the unlisted side if you want to get the real exposure to the underlying economy. And that's how we see it on our side.
Just a quick one while we're still on Africa. How are you playing the continent? And we've obviously discussed this before with the East African hub and the West African hub as we operate Kenya and Nigeria. Do you still play it along those lines, or are you investigating new virgin territories, for want of a better word?
Yeah. No, we believe in partnerships. Because we're not experts. I mean, the continent is a massive place, and we are just looking at the tiny bottom part of it. And so what we've been working jointly with the PIC has been to ensure that we establish a model that allows us to identify partners that can jointly assist us to deploy capital on the continent. And for us, the key content is actually local partnerships. I mean, there's no way that I can go and invest in Cameroon without having partnerships with the people from Cameroon to ensure that they understand the economy better and how do we invest jointly together. And then in other areas also has been to buy into establish Pan-African entities. And I think, we did the EcoBank transaction, and that gives you a good exposure into a network of relationships. And jointly with the PIC, we have been able to explore that to our advantage, and we've done a few transactions on the continent. And then we also have the Pan-African Infrastructure Development Fund, which has been in place since 2006, and through that also it has been a great platform for us to deploy capital on the continent. But when I look at our transition plans, which the board is still debating and is going to discuss further, we all appreciate that we are not rushing anywhere. We have to do it at the right pace and at the right prices to ensure that we get good value for the members of the GEPF and the pensioners.
John, you've been at the forefront in promoting things like ESG and CRISA, and we've got another question here that says that a viewer says that the ESG factors, for instance, don't get as much attention as it should around the world or globally. So what is your view on this, and why is ESG so important when evaluating investments?
Look, I believe that if you're a pension fund, you need to think long term. The liabilities that we're trying to match, they are long-term by nature. You get a young person at the age of 20 starting in their new job, they'll probably retire in 40 years' time. So when you think about investing their capital, your time horizon needs to be 40 years. So it's not about quarter to quarter. So for us, sustainability issues are critical. So if you look at issues like climate change, for example, what will be the impact of climate change on resource companies, on property companies? You need to take that into account, because the portfolio of the GEPF will still exist in 20 years' time and in 30 years' time. And really, you can't really derive profits at the expense of that future generation.
That also takes us into the UNPRI. Cape Town, talk to us. It's significant for South Africa.
Yeah, no, we're very excited. I've been on the advisory council of the PRI now for the last 2-3 years. And since we've been signatories, because we're one of the founding signatories to the UN-supported PRI, and since 2006, and this is the first time that they would be having their in-person annual meeting on the African continent, and that will be in Cape Town in October this year. And we're hoping that that will create an opportunity for most of the top global investors. The 28 trillion that we're talking about, will be putting it in one room and talking about Africa. And I think that is quite exciting for us. And obviously, we are also actively engaging with all the stakeholders. We are engaging with also the Office of the Minister of Finance to ensure that we are able to host a very successful PRI event, which will be the first one on the African continent.
You made a great remark off air, John, about the role that you also see yourself in the pension funds and instilling confidence. You said if you went into a market and invested alongside if you went into the Brazilian market and invested alongside Brazil's pension fund, biggest pension fund, you would have confidence in doing that. You're trying to instill confidence in Africa, and specifically in South Africa, around this big meeting of the UNPRI. Just tell us some of the initiatives you've got specifically with the mining, the situation around mining, around some of the things you want to do to educate the people that are coming here around the facts on the ground.
Yeah. Most of the pension funds, some of the top largest pension funds like CalPERS, CalSTRAS, the British Telecoms pension funds, are all signatories of the PRI, and they'll be in the country for the annual event. And they are investors in the South African economy through listed companies. Some of them are dual listed on the London Stock Exchange. And what they've requested us to do was that ahead of the PRI conference, would like to set up company meetings and probably do some mining visits in order for them to, to get a much better sense that we've got a much better working economy than what the media highlights could reflect. And also, I think we've also have a partnership with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. We'll also be showcasing the SRI index, that we know that it has been a very good benchmark, in terms of sustainability reporting on the South African markets. And with hoping that will give some of these big pension funds an insight into how the economy of South Africa operates, and secondly, give them a much better sense of what is happening on the ground and so forth. And hopefully with that, and we'll be able to then attract more capital for investment on the continent and also in South Africa. Because you'll note that if you look at the people that have been purchasing South African government bonds, has been mainly foreigners. So it's important to always create an opportunity to engage with this foreign capital and make sure that it continuously flowing to pursue opportunities where there are opportunities, and we believe there are great opportunities on the continent.
We're almost out of time. Can I squeeze in one more viewer question? And that is, what is your advice to smaller pension funds who are looking to provide a safe retirement for their members? Obviously, as head of the GEPF, one of the largest pension funds in the world.
Can't we reserve that for the next show?
For the next show? All right, well, that means there's going to be a part 2, so we'll hold you to that.
There is one more question.
Is there one more question?
And there's debates been raging because I was flabbergasted to see that John is a supporter of Arsenal Football Club. And John, I don't know if you've
This is Patrice Rousseau. You were
This is
stirring on Twitter earlier.
Double trouble, yes.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to see, I've been trying to bring Bronwyn around to this concept of Manchester United. Is there any chance you could change your allegiance and join a real club?
Look, we are investors, and I think Arsenal is the most profitable team in Europe.
They're fiscally conservative as well. I
Yeah,
think.
but I mean, I was looking at the numbers. I mean, quite interesting enough. I mean, they bought Anelka for £500,000, if I'm not mistaken, and sold him later on for £22 million. I mean, what type of investment return is